Hey everybody, Mr. Harvey here. Gonna quickly talk about our last lecture on chapter 7. We're gonna talk about some of the effects of the Industrial Revolution. We're gonna talk about urbanization, and we're gonna talk about the Jewish communities of Europe a little bit pre and post industrialization. So let's rock and roll. All right. When we last kind of left off, we were talking about industrialization, and we were talking about how Great Britain was the economic industrial giant. Okay, industrialization started there, and you should know the reasons why, and you should know some of the key inventions and all the context of uh, Great Britain industrializing. Great Britain had, excuse me, the majority of the world's coal production going on, iron production going on, making most of the world's textiles. Great Britain in the early first phase of industrialization, they ruled it. They're going to be challenged, though. The United States is going to come, and the United States is on its way to becoming a superpower that it is today. Um, Japan is going to industrialize in the second phase, and the country in Europe that Europe is going to be on the lookout for is Germany. Okay, they're going to unite with Otto von Bismarck in 1871. They're going to industrialize, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about most of the effects and mainly the social effects of the Industrial Revolution in chapter 13 in early February. We're going to talk about a couple of the effects on women right now. Okay. Um, the agricultural revolution, industrial revolution are going to have a really big impact on women, mainly for the worse. We're going to see women be taken out of the labor force. We're going to be seeing women. We're going to be seeing women and the jobs of women be more gender specific. For example, like what I'm trying to say is we're going to see jobs become gender specific, and women are really going to suffer during this. And we're going to see women become increasingly associated with the home during this time. All right. Now, traditionally, women worked. Okay, middle, middle class, lower class, peasant class, women were vital economically. Upper class, no. Okay, women, did their own thing, lived lives of luxury. Okay, but traditionally, women were engaged, on the farm, helping out. Women were, in artisans. Remember, with the artisan family, women were in charge of the wares, or would be in charge of selling. Women were important pre-industrial Europe in the economy. Women were crucial in the textile industry, in spinning cloth. Uh, but we see with the mechanization and commercialization of agriculture and industry, their roles are going to go away. What we are going to see is we're going to see machines taking jobs away. With the machine, you don't need as many workers. So who are they going to kick out? Not the men. They're going to kick out women. A spinning jenny can do the job of 5, 6, 7 women. Okay? You're going to have the men come in, operate the machines. You don't need as many women. Okay? That is one implication. Same in agriculture. You might see women working on the farm. Now you have a job that a machine can do, and it's going to be operated by a man. Okay? And women are going to be taken out of the labor force. Okay? Many women are going to be displaced from spinning thread, from farming, from other jobs, and we'll talk about this. They are going to suffer from this, and women, especially in poor families who still need money, women are going to be forced to turn to very desperate jobs such as prostitution, even engaging in criminal activity due to their poverty, due to their circumstances. Okay, and as a result, we're going to see the reputation and standing of women decline socially. Women are also going to become domestic servants. We're going to see women take some jobs. We're going to see kind of the creation of the maid. Women are going to be uh, taking these jobs in order to supplement an income. Also, during during this time, we're going to see women become increasingly associated with the home. So we're going to see women take jobs that are associated with domesticity, with homes. Okay, and we are going to see, as a result of the Industrial Revolution, we're going to see men and women's jobs are going to become separate and very gender specific. And what I mean by that is, think about like what society today contrives or believe or stereotypes as like a woman's job. For example, like a nurse, a secretary, a teacher. We're going to see gender assigned to a job. I think about like the opposite gender, right? Like a man's job, firefighter, cop, um, like a Navy SEAL. It's a man's job. Um, but I'll tell you something, that's definitely not true. I bet you some really amazing females like Ronda Rousey could be, a Navy SEAL. She's an unbelievable athlete and she's tough as nails. So, but we see those stereotypes, and we see work and gender stereotypes really arise during that time, and we see work be assigned to gender, and certain jobs be assigned to gender during this time. Okay, uh, uh, as I said before, women's work is going to become increasingly associated with the home rather than places where men work. So women, who who did work, poor families who still need women to work. Because in upper, even middle class families, we're going to see women leave the labor force. Um, Families that needed their women to work, you're going to work in jobs typically associated with the home because the home is typically going to be associated with gender, with the female gender, excuse me. There's going to be the assumption that women only work to supplement a man's income. So we're going to see this very stereotypical idea arise during the Industrial Revolution of, well, the man is the breadwinner and the man goes out and works all day, and the woman cooks and cleans and stays home, which is very traditional, but we see it kind of change a little bit during the Industrial Revolution. And families that could afford to have just one person working, we'll see the woman stay at the home and do the traditional jobs. Peasant families of where the woman could, they could not afford to have the woman not working. She's going to be working in domestic jobs. And there's the assumption though that women though only work to supplement the man's income, and we're going to start during this time to see women be paid less than men. And that's something that we still see today. I believe that women are paid, roughly 79, 75, 80 cents to the dollar that men are paid today in the same job. So that's something that we still see today. That could be a good continuity synthesis point if you ever write about it. And take a look. This is a great picture, a great example of women's work. A woman working, she's washing clothes, domestic job, probably getting paid not very much for this, but this is considered women's work, being a laundromat, washing clothes, very domestic, something a woman would do in her own household, and now she's probably doing that for another household, getting paid for it. Okay, and there's a cat. Okay, growth of cities, urbanization is a huge implication and topic of pre and post industrial Europe. Let's talk about some of the themes, okay? In the 1500s, we see, and I'm going to talk about a couple of cities and give you some scale, but in the 1500s, we didn't see a lot of big cities by our standards today. I want you guys to think about like Oxnard today. Oxnard has a population of probably 250,000 people. We have about 250,000 people in Oxnard. You didn't see back in the 1500s a lot of cities that big. LA is 3-4 million people, a couple million people. You didn't see cities that big. In the 1500s, you saw a lot of cities with about 10,000 people, not many cities with more than 100,000. 1800, we see big changes. We're going to see a lot of cities with more than 10,000. We're going to see many more cities with more than 100,000. Okay, and we're going to see this urbanization keep improving even during the 20th century, 1900s. Um, just kind of we're gonna see two trends of urbanization. Early urbanization is going to be centered around capitals and ports. That's mainly due to the monarchies and mainly due to overseas trade. And then with the Industrial Revolution, we're going to see new cities, small cities, really take a leap forward. Okay. All right, here we go. During the 1700s, we see considerable growth of towns. We're going to see capitals like London is going to take a big leap, but we're going to see. I really want you to pay to this part. Pay attention to this part of the slide. Okay. Before the Industrial Revolution, the main urban growth we saw in Europe was in capitals and ports, which makes sense. Okay, with a monarchy, the best example I can give you is Versailles, in the Paris area with Louis, with uh, with Louis, right? He built Versailles. He made the nobles live there. He had his army loyal to him, stationed there. Okay, so you're going to see capitals become very very populated because the monarchs are drawing people, their inner circle, to them to live there so they could watch them, so they could be loyal to them, etc. Okay, ports are growing because of trade. Okay, that's where the jobs are at. That's where the merchants are at. That's where the economic growth is at in these port cities. In the Industrial Revolution, you're going to see new cities, small towns rise. And there's a reason for that. You're going to see areas that are rich in natural resources attract people to build factories. When the factories are built in these new areas, you're going to attract jobs. Good example of this can be seen in Manchester, Leeds of England. Okay, we'll talk about other areas of Europe later, but you're going to see new towns, small towns really grow. Excuse me, sorry about that. And we're going to see new areas that are centered by a river or canals or waterways where there can be quick exchange of goods, or by a lot of natural resources. You're going to see new cities rise. Okay, and it's pretty much because the resources are going to be there, therefore the factories are going to be there, therefore the people are going to be there. Okay, and we're going to see that during industrialization. So you're going to see during industrialization, non-port, non-capital cities really grow. Okay, urban classes. Okay, we're gonna see with urbanization, we're gonna start talking about urban classes. Okay, now the urban rich were segregated from the poor, separated. Okay, the aristocracy and upper middle class lived in very nice areas. Okay, and I really want you guys to be aware of what I mean by the upper middle class. Okay, that's the bourgeoisie. That's like the gentry of England. Remember, the aristocracy, you don't have to be rich to be an aristocrat. It's a title, like the Duke of Harv, okay? The city of Harv. That is a title, okay? That gives you inherent privilege. Upper middle class is, just people without title that are really wealthy, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we, are chugging along towards the communism and communist manifesto. Okay. The poorest of the poor in urban areas lived around rivers. Why? Well, that's where the water was at. Okay. Now the problem with that is that people are gonna excrete. They're gonna pee in the water. They're gonna do a whole bunch of things in the water, and it's gonna mess it all up. Okay. And that is where people are gonna get their drinking water from. That's gonna create a lot of disease. And that's where people are going to shower at. It is not a good situation with people around sources of water, contaminating it. Modern, and that's why we're going to see modern sanitation during the early phases of industrialization really take off. At the very start of industrialization, there is modern sanitation, no. But as city officials and government officials are like, well, we got a big problem with the water and people are dying of disease. We're going to see that as urbanization, as in the industrialization moves along, we're going to see sanitation, which we kind of talked about before, hygiene, hospitals improve. Merchants and artisans lived above their shops. Uh, work was life, life was work, and poverty is in the early part of the Industrial Revolution is a big problem. Okay, and we'll talk about that more in chapter 13. Okay, here are the classes that you should be well aware of. Okay, upper class, nobles. Okay, and these are people of title. Okay, that have noble privilege. In class, someone was like, "You said bankers twice." Well, this is like a banker uh, who doesn't have a title or privilege, and this is a banker who does. Okay, um, I want you guys to pay attention to this word bourgeoisie. Okay, we're going to talk about this a lot during the French Revolution, and we're definitely talking about this during communism. Okay, but these are the people who were very wealthy but didn't have the title of the nobility. Um, these people were really involved in this consumer revolution of selling and consuming goods. They feared the poor and they wanted the nobles' power. Okay, like they did not uh, like the poor being so close to them. They feared their numbers and their potential political power, which they will harness during the French Revolution. The Third Estate will, and they wanted the power of the nobility, and they wanted basically the political power of the nobility. And we'll talk about that during the French Revolution. The bourgeoisie being part of the Third Estate, okay, this middle class, and they're going to harness the sheer numbers of the poor and peasantry in order to really start overthrowing the first two estates in the monarchy of Louis XVI. You have the artisans, your everyday urban worker, very vulnerable economically, didn't make a whole lot, but they weren't super poor. But these cabinet makers, smiths, printers, tailors, um, and they were part of guilds. Now guilds are going to go away with capitalism. I'm going to talk about guilds really quickly because they're important. Pre-industrial revolution, you see a lot of in pre-capitalism you see a lot of guilds. Guilds are like these associations, like carpenters. You have this carpenter association in a city, say Paris. Uh, and these guild bands together to make sure not too many other carpenters can come into Paris and become a carpenter. And so that decreases competition. It allows those carpenters to have a safe job and a steady income. That's the opposite of capitalism. Remember, competition is encouraged, right? May the best survive. You know, best carpenter wins. Gets the most money. Okay. So we're gonna see that go away. But industrialization, in early industrialization, you still see guilds in the artisan class. Okay, all right. There's some artisans making some stuff. All right, urban riots. All right, urban riots are unique and they're interesting. And we're gonna see urban riots eventually transform into the strike after industrialization. Uh, Urban riots pre-industrial revolution were typically overbred. You would see, leaders get a whole following. They would round up some people who are hungry and angry if they were really upset over the price of bread, and they would, confiscate this bread from a baker and sell it for a just price, and then give the money back to the baker, like whatever they felt was the reasonable price. I mean, think about it like this: if all of a sudden gas stations in America started selling gas for $100 a gallon, you probably see a gas riot. You probably see people like break into oil refineries or even like gas stations and pump the gas out and then give the gas station clerk like money for what they think they really owe them. It's kind of like the same thing. Um, Luckily, Shell and all those companies know better. I think to not overcharge people for gas. But that would happen during this time with bread riots. And the danger of these riots restrain the merchants' greeds. Okay, Shell and Crest toothpaste is not going to charge you $100 for toothpaste because number one, no one would buy it, but number two, people might just go to the store and just take it and be like, dude, I'm not going to pay for that. All right, so that the just price and the danger of riots will restrain greed. And that was a feature of the old regime. That was a feature of pre-industrial Europe. All right. You might see religious riots. Okay, a way to for those exclude to make their will known. but also we'll see riots. They're also a way to keep minorities oppressed. Um, Remember, we talked about the Jewish population, and we do see in Europe, and we'll talk about that. But we did remember during the Black Death, we saw, you know, a religious riot on the Jewish populations, and that was a way to scapegoat the Jewish populations communities because they're being blamed for the Black Death. Um, and we do see riots become a political tool, mainly used by the upper class. The last thing a monarch wants is all the peasantry rising up and creating a whole bunch of hassle, a whole bunch of dead people, and economic disturbance. And so the upper class will use riots and kind of fan the flames of riots, and we will see some later. But we will see the upper class, and this was typical of also pre-industrial Europe. The upper class will fan the flames of riots in order to kind of get back at the monarchy and say, hey, we can stop this riot, but what we do for us, monarch, Mr. King, Queen. Okay. All right. Speaking of the Jewish population, let's talk about them a little bit during the 1700s. Okay. Now we know most of the Jewish population lived in Eastern Europe. Why? Okay, the Black Death. Remember, they were blamed for that, and we see a lot of them move over in Eastern Europe in the Poland area, especially, and we'll see that we will see the implications of that later when we talk about Hitler. Um, uh, Commonly regarded as non-resident, denied citizenship privileges. Okay, they were typically regarded as separate. Now, we know, okay, with the Enlightenment that there's changes. I'm really talking about, this is pre-Enlightenment, pre-industrial revolution, but this is and we know that changes with Prussia, with Austria, right? Religious toleration. Remember, Prussia is going to invite Muslims and Jewish communities, and they are going to invite immigration into their countries. They're going to be building synagogues, mosques, and they're doing that for right, having more workers, larger army. Okay, but in other areas and even before that, they were considered separate, non-residents. Okay, they lived in separate communities called ghettos. All right, not the not necessarily like the ghetto which is used today, like a rough down area. These areas could be not as socioeconomically high as other urban areas or well-to-do as other areas, but these were just typically associated with Jewish villages. Okay, treated distinctly, religiously and legally. Jewish communities could not and did not mix in with the mainstream. Okay, and this age of the ghetto, and this really started with the Inquisition. Remember, the Inquisition, Muslims, non-Catholic Christians, Jewish communities, populations were targeted and were not allowed to mix with the mainstream. And that was begun by our Catholic Spain during the 1400s. We do see some Jewish citizens become very famous for helping rulers to finance wars, but most lived in poverty. And we're going to talk about this later, but the Jewish religion was still very alienated, very oppressed, very stigmatized in Europe. Okay, that's the lecture for today. Okay, about 25 minutes. Please watch this, please take notes, and please get your quiz finished. Thank you so much. I'll see you all later. Have a great weekend.